Now, it's only week 3 of President Trump's second term, and disheartened Democratic lawmakers are already introducing articles of impeachment against him. Peter Doocy is live at the White House with the latest. Peter.
Emily, impeaching President Trump twice did not stop him from getting easily reelected. In fact, it's possible that it might have helped him. But that is the well that Democratic lawmakers are going back to, this time because of the president's stated plan for the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip.
I rise to announce that the movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done. I also rise to say that the impeachment movement is going to be a grass-up movement, not a top-down.
Democratic resistance is taking other forms as well, like describing DOJ engineer access to Treasury payment systems with extremely charged language.
We will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi Nepo baby. We are at war.
What we're not going to do is stand around while they pull this bullshit. We are going to be in your face. We are going to be on your...
We've got to fight back. You've got to be on the streets tomorrow.
We took notes of all of that and brought it to the White House press briefing room. Got this response. Some elected Democrats are so steamed about DOJ. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress. We have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable. We're going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here. And for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
Some Democrats in D.C. have gone back to the drawing board, realizing after November's election that all the extreme anti-Trump rhetoric was not helping them with voters, but some Democrats here in D.C. have not. Emily?
Peter Doocy, thank you. All right, Kennedy, we saw a lot there, but I want to focus on this point, which is that on the meter of freakout. What does this proposed impeachment indicate to you? Because apparently legislating or representing constituents, representing the 74 million Americans that voted for Trump, apparently is off the table with those Democrat lawmakers.
What they're doing is fighting to keep a corrupt bureaucratic state in place, which costs taxpayers a lot of money, and people are finally waking up to realize that the government takes their money and then wastes their money and makes their lives very, very difficult. So this is falling on deaf ears because everyone has heard this chorus over and over and over again. And it's 2025. Hysteria doesn't sell. Action does. Unfortunately, they're not offering action in terms of counter-proposals and ideas and data-driven solutions. What they're offering is violent action. We've already seen a president who was reelected in the face of 2 assassination attempts, and my fear is these people are trying to fan up so much hysteria with their followers who might be unwell that they want to see that come to fruition, and we can't have that in this country. And, you know, with this mandate, with the presidency, the Senate, and the House, people are saying we want a different way, we want a better way. This is not better. It's an old playbook, but unfortunately, it's also a very dangerous one.
And this outrage, David, where is the outrage over what the audit is uncovering? How are we watching Democratic lawmakers be so affronted at the notion of cleaning house, stewarding wisely the tax dollars they earn that we pay? I'm not quite sure where the calls to violence come from, where it originates with such offense over spring cleaning.
Well, first of all, I'll give you an actual number, which Kennedy did not do. I got to say, I think it's a 10 on the freakout meter. I think it's a 0 on the substance meter, which is what you're getting to. And people voted for Trump because they wanted stuff of substance done. They wanted the streets cleaned up. They wanted the borders closed. They wanted the economy to improve. They wanted specific things. And there's so much nonsense about what's being said. I just have this ex-post by Dan Goldman, who's a big Dem, who came out and said, make no mistake, Elon Musk owns Donald Trump and is calling the shots. Now, you can say a lot of things about Donald Trump, but nobody owns him. Even an assassin's bullet couldn't own the guy. When I was a kid, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I tended to be on the left, but I saw a debate between a conservative, William Buckley, and a radical guy who I liked, a guy named Dick Gregory. And Dick Gregory was just destroyed by William Buckley, by the argument. And at one point, Gregory said, well, you're stupid. And I said to myself, no, wait a minute, you can say a lot of things about Buckley, but he wasn't stupid. That kind of changed my thinking. I'm wondering how many young people look at the hysteria of that Democratic mob and then the substance of what Trump is doing and are thinking sort of the same thing I did.
I'm curious about something, Harris, which is that, we've started to see an immediate reckoning, an immediate accountability that this administration is holding elected officials to. We saw that, for example, in your interview with Tom Homan, borders our last hour, where he says, harboring an illegal is a felony. Obstructing justice is a felony. Like they're actually putting their money or taking their money away where it counts. And my question specifically is, we've seen Congress people in the past being held to account, being censured for peddling lies and being quite reckless with their rhetoric. Are we going to see, do you think, an accounting and censuring of these lawmakers that are calling for violence?
Well, so what happens is when you see, and I put the freak out actually in proportion with potential cover-up. Like, what are they so afraid that we're going to find out? And the more we find out, it's not only embarrassing for them, but it makes it, I think, very fair to question, are there relationships around the world with which our leaders have untoward behavior? I mean, are they doing things with our money that we should know about and maybe we wouldn't be okay with? And we only know that if we have enough forensic, enough daylight to show us what's going on. And so directly in answer to your question, accountability will come when we know the truth. I think that the outing of that information will be accountability enough. It will either shame them to the point where they don't have the jobs and politics that they have anymore because nobody will vote for them, or they'll have to answer for things that can't be found that were attached to those dollars that were given.
Yeah, and I venture something, Jerry, which is that the vast majority of them, I think, have no idea either. To David's point about a zero on the substance scale, I think a lot of those shouting, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Those who actually have the substance are quite a few, I believe.
Well, I think there is a lot of knee-jerk. I think there's also a lot of cover-up. I think a lot of people are trying to protect streams of money that are coming their way or coming to people they know. I mean, look, this is, think about it. This is the way I think about it. I'm from Western North Carolina. 3 months ago, that place got slammed by a hurricane. People are still living in tents. These are Americans. We are not taking care of them. We've turned our back. We've walked away. We've said, we don't need to do anything. And yet we're spending millions to trans programs in countries all over the world, sexual re-education for people who are not in this country. I mean, it's astonishing to me the way our dollars are being spent. And if you're not angry about that, I mean, I don't know what's going to get you interested.
I mean, I wonder if without this audit, we ever would have known that Bangladesh was getting all the money that it is for DEI. I mean, some of these things are not even ideological. You were talking about the trans surgeries. They don't always match up with the countries that we're giving them the money for.
No, exactly, let alone ours.